You know, we all want to believe that the people who live next door to us, the folks who wave as we pull into our driveways or bring over extra cookies in December, have good intentions, and most of them do. But sometimes something feels off, and if we're honest with ourselves, gut level honest, we know when curiosity has turned into control. One of the clearest and most unsettling signs that your neighbor might be monitoring you not just being curious is when they mention personal information you never shared with them. You might hear something like, "How was your dentist appointment yesterday?" Or, "I noticed your cousin stayed over again this weekend. He seems to be here a lot lately." At first, it might seem harmless, maybe even thoughtful, but then reality sets in. You didn't tell them anything about your appointment. You didn't post about it, and your cousin didn't even come through the front door. This kind of unsolicited, overly specific knowledge is a red flag. It suggests that they're not just noticing things in passing, they're paying attention with intent. Whether it's peeking through blinds, taking mental notes, or using more sophisticated means like cameras or apps, the effect is the same. They're gathering information about you without your permission. And that's not okay. This behavior creates an environment of hyper vigilance. Instead of feeling relaxed in your own home, your private space, you begin to filter your movements, question your actions, and adjust your behavior because someone else is watching. What's important to understand here is this. Just because someone isn't yelling or invading your space physically doesn't mean they're not crossing a line emotionally and psychologically. The impact of being quietly monitored can be just as harmful as overt confrontation. It erodes your sense of safety. It's an invasion not with force, but with presence, with attention that wasn't invited. And when you sense that someone is noticing too much, knowing too much without any reasonable way they could or should know it, that's when you need to start protecting your privacy, not second guessing yourself. It's not rude to set boundaries. It's not overreacting to trust your gut. It's wise, healthy, and necessary. You deserve to live in peace, not in quiet observation. Most of us live in patterns. We leave the house at a certain time. We water the plants on Saturday mornings. We go for walks after dinner. And there's nothing wrong with that, in fact. It's part of what gives our lives rhythm and predictability. But what happens when someone else begins to track those patterns, not in a casual or coincidental way, but with precision? Let me paint the picture. You're walking to your car one morning and your neighbor casually says, "Running a little late today, you usually leave 10 minutes earlier." Or they ask, "Did you stop going to yoga on Tuesdays? Haven't seen you with your mat in a few weeks." You didn't tell them your schedule, you didn't announce your plans, but somehow they know, not once, not twice, but often, and with detail. That's when your routine stops being part of your private life and starts being someone else's informal database. When someone begins collecting your habits like day, the points logging what time you leave, who visits you, how long they stay, when your lights turn on, when your garbage cans go out, it's not neighborly. It's a slow, steady form of surveillance, and it makes you feel like your life is being tracked, not witnessed. The danger here is subtle but significant. What begins as observation becomes pattern recognition. What becomes pattern recognition becomes control. Because the more someone knows about how you live, the easier it becomes to judge, intervene, or manipulate even under the guise of concern. This isn't about paranoia. It's about discernment. It's the difference between someone saying, "I noticed your mailbox was open, just wanted to make sure nothing was stolen," and someone saying, "You usually get home at 5:15. I was surprised you were back before 5 today." One is protective. The other is intrusive. One honors your space, the other quietly invades it. Let's be clear, you are not a project to be studied. You are a person with a right to privacy. Your patterns are not public property just because you live in close proximity to someone. So when your routine, the very rhythms that keep your life steady, start to feel like they're being watched, analyzed, or commented on, that's not just curiosity. That's someone turning your life into a spreadsheet they never had permission to open. And you are allowed to close it. You are allowed to change your routine, close your blinds, pause your conversations mid driveway. You are allowed to stop explaining your every move just to keep someone else's questions at bay. Your life is yours, and your patterns are not their business. I saw a new car in your driveway late last night. I just wanted to make sure everything's okay. You've had a lot of packages lately that can attract thieves, you know. I noticed you didn't take your trash out this week. Hope everything's all right. On the surface, it sounds like kindness. But if you slow down, really listen, and pay attention to how it makes you feel, not just what's being said, you'll notice the undertone. You're not being checked on, you're being checked up on. There's a big difference, because true concern comes with care. It respects your privacy and waits for you to invite it in. It offers support without conditions. But control wants access. It wants justification. It asks questions not out of empathy, but out of entitlement. And it often hides behind the language of help so it doesn't have to be held accountable. When someone starts commenting on who comes to your house, how often you're home, what time your lights go off, or whether you've been keeping up with things, they're not just noticing, they're policing. Slowly, subtly, they're trying to shape the way you live by applying pressure through concern, and if you call it out, they may act offended. I was just trying to be nice. You don't have to be so sensitive. I care about this neighborhood. Excuse me for noticing. But here's the truth: care is not control, and being a neighbor doesn't entitle someone to manage your life. When people use concern as a way to insert themselves into your choices, whether it's who you date, how you spend your money, how you raise your kids, or when you choose to rest, that's not about keeping you safe. That's about making themselves feel important and in charge. Control, dressed up as concern, is one of the hardest things to call out because it seems well-meaning. But if you constantly feel like you have to explain yourself, defend your choices, or anticipate judgment from someone who's just trying to help, you're not in a safe dynamic, you're in a monitored one. And let me say this clearly: you don't owe explanations for how you live your life in your own home. You don't need to justify your routines, your visitors, or your purchases just to maintain the peace next door. It's not unkind to set limits. It's not rude to create space. It's not disrespectful to stop answering questions that were never respectfully asked. You can appreciate kindness without submitting to control. You can value community without tolerating manipulation, because real concern doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like support, and anything less than that is not your burden to carry. There's a feeling that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. It's that little ripple of tension in your chest when you walk outside and feel eyes on you. It's that flicker of discomfort when you glance toward a window and there they are, watching, again, and not in the passing, everyday way we all sometimes glance out a window. Not in the casual, hey, neighbor kind of way. No, this is different. This is frequent, intentional, and persistent. It's when your neighbor just happens to be at their window or on their porch or walking their dog every single time you step outside. It's when they linger just a little too long, when their gaze doesn't glance, it lingers, when they ask questions later about things you didn't even realize they were close enough to hear or see. Let's be honest, not all watching is harmless. Some people watch to understand, some people watch to protect, but others, they watch to collect, to catalog, to control. And when someone seems to always be there, always looking, always available to witness what you'd rather keep private, it begins to feel less like a coincidence and more like surveillance. The human nervous system is wise. It knows when it's being observed. We may not have words for it right away, but our bodies know. Our breath shortens, our shoulders tense, our sense of ease evaporates, because being watched changes how we move, how we talk, how free we feel to just be. What makes this kind of watching so insidious is how easily it's dismissed. They're probably just bored. Maybe they're just friendly. I'm probably overreacting. But when the watching becomes a pattern, when it starts to feel more like monitoring, then chance you're not overreacting. You're reacting, rightly, because your instinct is trying to tell you the truth your logic is afraid to say out loud. This doesn't feel safe, and the more you try to ignore it, the more energy it takes from you. You start to wonder, should I go out now or wait until they're not home? Should I have that conversation outside or will it be overheard? Should I change where I sit on my porch so they can't see me as clearly? That's not peaceful living. That's life under quiet observation. And it is not your job to make someone else comfortable at the cost of your security. Let me say this clearly. Being visible does not mean you've given permission to be observed. Living near someone does not entitle them to access your every move. You don't owe anyone a smile or small talk if what you're really feeling is please stop watching me. It takes courage to name this, to stop dismissing your own experience, to say this is not okay, even when others might say you're being too sensitive, but boundaries are built in truth. And the truth is this: if someone watches you often enough to alter how you live, that's not community. That's control, and it's time to draw the line. We live in a time where technology is everywhere: doorbell cameras, security systems, smart speakers, motion sensors. All of it was designed to make us feel safer in our homes. But what happens when it's used to keep tabs on you instead of protecting them? Let me be clear. There is nothing inherently wrong with using technology to protect your own property. That's wise. It's reasonable. It's a reflection of healthy boundaries. But when that technology is turned outward, when cameras are angled toward your front door, your windows, your yard, your life, that's when it becomes something else entirely. That's when security becomes surveillance. And here's the thing about surveillance: it's not always obvious. You might not even realize it at first. Maybe your neighbor mentions something strange like what time you came home last night, even though they were asleep. Maybe they bring up what you were wearing last weekend, or who stopped by while you were away, or that your dog was outside a little longer than usual. You didn't tell them. No one else did. So how do they know? Technology, we forget how powerful these tools are: video feeds, audio capture, motion alerts. Even smart doorbells record everything that passes by their lens, and depending on how they're angled. That could include your entire front porch, your driveway, your private conversations at the mailbox. Now let's add in the digital layer. Some neighbors track you on social media. They monitor when you're tagged in photos, when you're out of town, when you post something that lets them calculate what's happening behind your closed door. Sometimes they even cross into more extreme behaviors like scanning online deliveries, checking license plates, or saving footage of your guests. And when you put it all together, the tech, the knowledge, the quiet comments, you realize someone isn't just living near you. They're digitally and physically collecting information about your life, and here's what makes it so complicated. If you say something, they'll likely defend themselves. It's for safety, everyone has cameras. It's public space, I can record it. Why would you assume I'm watching you? Because surveillance culture has normalized itself. It's taught us that whoever owns the tech owns the right, but ownership is not the same as permission, and legality is not the same as ethics. Being filmed without your consent, even accidentally, chips away at your sense of privacy. You start second, guessing where you walk, what you say, how long you linger. You feel like you're starring in a movie you never auditioned for, and someone else holds the remote. If this is happening to you, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not overreacting. You're responding to something very real: the quiet but relentless erosion of your right to live unseen when you choose to be unseen. You have the right to speak up. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to adjust your boundaries even if it makes someone else uncomfortable. Privacy isn't a luxury, it's a basic need, and just because we live in a world wired with Wi Fi and motion sensors doesn't mean we've